And welcome back. So let me explain how we got from Chris and the sheriff to me. The first segment and the very last crazy criminal segment are going to be a redo from last week. The tornadoes, the storms we had in Jacksonville, and spring break has combined to leave us with me and some wonderful guests. So I have with us today Chriselle Smith from the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, sir.
And Rebecca Cleveland from Texas and Birmingham, but not Cleveland, from the David Matthews with one T, Center
right.
for Civic Civic Life.
You got it.
Not to be confused with the band. We had this conversation offline, and it's not the Dave Matthews with two T band, it's the David Matthews with one T, Center for Civic Life. So, just to, you're from Jacksonville.
I am.
And have had a hard time this last week, but things are progressing really well, I hear.
They are progressing a lot faster than what I've expected. There's been a huge turnout of volunteers from all over the state, and been very fortunate and very blessed, I think, with all the help.
There's been a lot of help throughout the county, and we want to remind our viewers, if you're living in the affected areas and you haven't seen somebody from the EMA or an assessment team or somebody from the Red Cross, you need to be in contact with the emergency management folks in Jacksonville. They want to make sure that everybody's been talked to that's had damage, so that they can get the assessments right. It's all about gathering up what people need in order to get those needs where they need to go. So lots of volunteers in Jacksonville, things are progressing. So Civic Life is maybe getting back to normal in Jacksonville. Certainly when the school reopens after April 2nd, maybe we'll see some normalcy. But talking about Civic Life, we have the David Matthews Center for Civic Life and Rebecca. So tell us a little bit, there's a huge history to this foundation, right?
Yeah, we're named after a very special Alabamian. His name is Dr. David Matthews. He's from Grove Hill in Clark County, and he was the former president of the University of Alabama back in the 60s and 70s and oversaw integration there, which deeply impacted our three founders. And he's currently the president and CEO of the Kettering Foundation in Dayton, Ohio, where they study what does it take to make democracy work as it should. And so he writes prolifically about the role of citizens in public life, and so that's something that our founders had in mind about 10 years ago when they formed the Alabama Center for Civic Life and requested to have it named after Dr. Matthews, and he graciously agreed. So he's still living, still writing, and we're working to honor his legacy, his ongoing legacy in Alabama through our programming.
That's great, and we had you down, or Leadership Calhoun County had you and your organization down for one of the, I guess it was Law Enforcement Day, talking about civic involvement and motivating both the adults and the YLCC that day to get involved. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you found Rebecca and her group.
Rebecca and her group were at a leadership luncheon that I attended with the state down in Clanton, Alabama, and so I connected with them and thought that they would be a great fit to kind of integrate into the leadership program because there is a lot of civic responsibility to make your community a better place. And so I felt like I wanted to incorporate them, and then we just stumbled upon their new venture and thought we would.
The new venture, which is What's Next Alabama. So tell us about What's Next in Alabama.
So What's Next Alabama is part of our ongoing forum series. So that's called Alabama Issues Forums, and it's community conversations across the state of Alabama where we try to bring folks together in local communities. We're neutral moderators. We believe that citizens are the experts on their communities and that they have great power and responsibility within themselves to address local issues. So What's Next Alabama is born out of a previous forum series that we did on investing in healthy infants and toddlers, and through that conversation we heard a lot of things about workforce development, cost of childcare are high, community plays a big role in that, so community and economic and workforce development were issues that we felt like it was important to address again. We're also coming up on the state's bicentennial, which, as you know, which is a great opportunity to sort of look back at our past, take a look at where we've been, take a look at where do we want to go, and also how do we get there. So these forums are deliberative in nature, so it's not just one more conversation about something that has probably been talked about many times. We seek to have 3 conversations just as a starting point that hopefully move towards folks identifying common ground and taking action on local issues of concern.
Well, that's super. And we're going to take a little break here, and then we'll come back and talk more in detail. But I love the concept of this organization getting people involved in their community. And we've seen a lot of that in the last couple of weeks with the kids from Florida going to Washington and all that. And I think civic involvement is going to make this country, and certainly our local communities, a much better place. But we'll talk more about that when we get back. So stay tuned, folks. And welcome back again. We hope you saw some people in the lineup. Even though that was kind of last week's lineup, those people are still, for the most part, out there. And if you know where they are, please give us a call. We'd be happy to go pick them up and let them have a few days in our hotel. But in the meantime, we're here with Chriselle and Rebecca, and we're talking about civic life and some of the stuff that the David Matthews with 1T organization is doing. So tell us more. Before the break, we were talking about getting people involved and how what you do is issue-driven. And tell us a little bit about some of those specific issues and maybe some of the ones that are specific for Calhoun County.
Well, issue-driven is a great way to describe it. We definitely, it's a good way to segue into, I always want to emphasize how we're nonpartisan. We never want to sway a conversation. We want it to be focused on issues, not personalities or politics necessarily. Issues for Calhoun County really have, it's up to the community to define that as they see fit. We see a lot of emerging trends. You know, we know every community is specific and unique, but we hear a lot about public transportation, especially in rural communities. We hear a lot about workforce development. That can look different in different areas. Some communities want to address that, say, by addressing substance abuse. You need a sober and educated workforce for it to be thriving. Other communities want to address it by forming, liaisons with maybe between the high school and local businesses to have a shadowing program. One community up in Coleman County wanted to address public transportation by bringing together all the local churches and the church fans and starting a volunteer-driven effort to assist with folks who, they really saw a connection between transportation and workforce development, actually, because there were folks who were struggling with, getting and maintaining a job because they didn't have the means to get to and from that job. So those are just a few examples.
And you guys facilitate this. Your purpose is to come in and help bring all of those people together, and then not necessarily guide the conversation, but help them figure out how to solve those problems, maybe?
Well, yes, we our mission is to strengthen community collaboration, active citizenship, and effective decision making. So we're not going to try to tell a community what to do, but we do work in a lot of different communities, and so we can serve as sort of a point of connection between folks who are doing good work in other communities and folks who are wanting to work on the same thing in their community. So it can help to share best practices. But at the same time, we do feel that it's very much up to the citizens to define what they want to do in their community and how they want to do it. And then we see our role as, we can amplify the great work that they are doing.
And you can see it from the statewide level too, if not the national level.
Yes.
And then, of course, that dovetails nicely in what the mission of the chamber is too, doesn't it?
Yeah, our mission is to make Calhoun County a great place, a dynamic place for people to work, visit, and live. And so we want to address that concern about what does that look like, and where are we falling short, and how can we get there. And we want our citizens and our educators and our business leaders, we want them to all be involved in getting us to that point. So.
And we have all of those same problems: transportation, having a sober workforce, and having a skilled workforce is a big issue for me, not only at the sheriff's office, but in our community. I see a shortage of the trades, the skill, what we used to call the skilled trades, the welders and plumbers and electricians and all that. And
we hear that a lot.
Yeah. And having those people available, we would then start to see those jobs come back. Manufacturers would start rebuilding, I would think. Yeah. Is that what you're seeing kind of in other areas?
Yes, we hear that a lot. In our issue guide that we use to kind of structure the conversation, it's still very open-ended, but we cite the 2016 State of the Workforce Report, and they talk a lot about how, you know, there need to be more skilled labor. And we actually heard in Clay County they're wanting to start a trade school, which is, you know, just an idea as of yet, but it's because they're seeing the same concerns. They're seeing that there's a need for not just, you know, higher education, but alternatives to higher education, and that includes skilled labor.
We've been talking about it for years, even back when I was in leadership Calhoun County, way back in '97, and even before then, the conversation was not everybody needs or wants to go to college, and you shouldn't have to go to college to get a decent job and be able to raise a family, and that's where the skilled trades come in, and people should graduate from high school with apprentice level skills if that's the direction they want to go in, and that's hard to do. Not a lot of schools offer that. So that's excellent. So what other issues? Well, you said you had some stuff coming up for Calhoun County. You have some dates set. Do you know what those dates are?
April 4th, 11th, and 18th are the dates of the forum. Those are Wednesdays, and they'll start at 9 a.m. at the Chamber of Commerce.
And who can go to those?
Anyone. It's open to any of the chamber members, business industry, citizens, and anybody in the community.
Will the youth leadership Calhoun County be part of that?
Well, the forums are held during the day, so I won't have all of my students available to come to that.
It's a great opportunity for students. You just yank them out of school and let them be there.
Yeah. Well, with them having spring break this week and last week, I don't think their teachers are going to let them out again.
Oh, they'll be happy to let them out. It'll be all right. Well, we loved having you on the show, talked about that. If you need more information from the David Matthews Center for Civic Life, they have a website.
Yes, we have a website. It is matthewscenter.org. Very simple, easy to remember, Matthews with one T. Thank you for emphasizing that. That's how we should introduce ourselves. And we also are on Facebook, the David Matthews Center for Civic Life. We're on Twitter, for those of you who are on Twitter, and we have an Instagram.
Outstanding. It's a great organization that is promoting people to get involved in their communities. So please look into that organization, tune into the Chamber of Commerce for the April sessions that are coming up, where you can really impact what's going on in Calhoun County. And until then, we will see you right after the break. Actually, Chris and the sheriff will see you right after the break here on Calhoun County's Most Wanted.